Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we have a whole lot of playoff football to talk about with you guys. Most of the wildcard action has now been completed. Of course, we still have 2 games tomorrow, including the Nerd Sesh Bowl, Logan, Bills Steelers, so we will be back tomorrow night talking about all of that. But let's start with the game of the weekend, Logan, because we saw a few blowouts, but then we saw one game go down to the wire. And there was a lot of the line here in terms of revenge game, personal storylines, a franchise trying to overcome so much suffering in their history. And that was the Detroit Lions escaping, narrowly beating the LA Rams in a really awesome game. And I got to give you your credit because you have been a Lions believer from the jump. Preseason, you had them in your NFC title game. For our playoff predictions, you had them in your NFC title game. So, who did you think was the hero of this win? Who deserves the most credit?
The Trench Boys. I thought that the Lions Trench guys really dominated this game on both sides of the football. Offensively, at the beginning, just running all over the Rams D-line, setting up in the middle with Montgomery. If it's Jahmyr Gibbs outside the tackles, they were really able to establish the running game early. I also thought the Rams just did a really poor job of tackling, too, allowing a lot of big breakaways. But, yeah, I think that's really where the Lions dominated, too. And on the other end, Aiden Hutchinson, them consistently getting pressure, stuffing the Rams at the line of scrimmage. And really, it's the red zone. And, again, this is a blanket statement you can make for a lot of games, but the Lions go to the red zone 3 times. They come away with 3 touchdowns. The Rams go to the red zone 3 times. They come away with 3 field goals. There is some clock management stuff in here. The Rams have to burn a lot of timeouts early. But you hit on what I think the big thing is about this for Detroit, man. This is the culmination of about 30 years of suffering. Carson, this is their first win. We noted on last show the last time that they had been to the NFC title game. Carson, that's the last time that the Detroit Lions had ever won a playoff game, point-blank period. The 1991 season, 1992 playoffs is when it happened. They had lost 9 straight playoff games, and you think about the brutal fashion some of those losses are. This is the culmination of a lot of suffering for Detroit. And I do think they're legit, Carson. I think that this is a formula that you can buy into. I mean, you can have your criticisms about Jared Goff. That one play, I love you, Jared. Thank you for winning this football game for Detroit. But that one play, those little instances, man, really tell you about a player. That two-handed shuffle toss to 89. I mean, it's the most Jared Goff play of all time, man.
Yeah,
it's a tried and true formula. I will give the Lions defense a ton of credit too. I thought that we could be in for an absolute shootout in the sense that they would never get a stop on Stafford. They did a tremendous job in the red zone. The secondary and the defensive backs really stepped up and made plays when they needed to. And yeah, I think this is a really reliable formula. They're strong in the trenches, Carson. They can run the hell out of the football, and they've got a guy under center that I trust enough. Jared Goof is going to do some Jared Goof things. He trips over his own 2 feet in this game.
He did.
He's got 2 left feet. He's relatively uncoordinated. When he's really under pressure, sometimes he can do really boneheaded things, but they protected him. They kept him really clean today. So the lion's share of the credit, to me, goes to the Trench Boys, especially that offensive line.
Yeah, this was really a signature Lions win, just in terms of the way that they did it. With a couple of twists, maybe, because they did end up relying on the defense in the home stretch of this one. But the strength of their defense has been the trenches. It has been the pass rush, and it has been the run defense. That's where they've consistently been good. That back line has had some issues, some real issues, but this entire year, they've been second in opposing rushing yards allowed, and they've been third in opposing rushing yards per attempt. And they really limited the Rams rushing game overall in this one, just 68 yards on the ground. But to me, Aiden Hutchinson is the MVP of this game. 2 sacks, one of which is Stafford taking a dive, and he was the closest guy, so that doesn't really count. It shouldn't really count. But 5 quarterback hits, and when you think about timely plays, he is the guy who got the Rams off the field. First of all, he is the one who drew the hold to take them out of field goal range. Massive. Would have been a long field goal, but otherwise, in all likelihood, the Rams take a lead in this game, and now the burden is on the Lions to actually drive down there and win this one instead of just killing the clock. And then on the third down, the replay of that down after the penalty, he sped Stafford up with some real pressure. Like, he just kept on winning his matchup and disrupting a Rams offense. And Matthew Stafford, who when he did have time, I mean, he was making every throw in the book, man. He was pretty exceptional in this game. But Hutchinson is the dude who made enough plays. Him, the collective defensive line, and then, as you mentioned early, they were really strong in the trenches in this one. But I thought what was kind of a beautiful moment was Jared Goff stepping up. He was awesome in the first half. But when it came time for them to win this game, they couldn't really rely on the rushing attack anymore, and had been really stagnant in the second half. And they put the ball in Jared's hands twice when they need first downs to end this game, and he delivered. And I just thought that this entire stretch, these last 2 seasons, has been such an awesome redemption arc for Jared Goff, who I've always been a fan of. I mean, I'm a lifelong Cal Bears fan, so like Jared Goff is my guy. He's a Bay Area boy, but there's just no denying that in LA, it always felt like he was the thing holding them back because he had too many Jared Goof moments, and he could lead some really good team offenses with awesome play calling and stacked weapons around him. But those last couple seasons, the turnovers were just a bit too much, and it felt like, all right, if we can get in a more dynamic creator at this position, we can win it all. And then they got Matt Stafford, and they literally did it. But that was clearly not the nail in the coffin for Goff, because he was unbelievable last season. And although it wasn't rewarded with a playoff appearance, that offense was so good. He was like the least mistake-prone quarterback in the league, remarkably. And this year, he got off to that same torrid start, and then there were some ups and downs, and there were some bad games. And that's the reason I picked the Rams in this one. I thought this was like a 50-50 ball game, and then it came down to my faith in Matt Stafford outweighs some of the advantages I think the Lions do have in the trenches, because I'm worried about which Jared Goff you're going to get. And he wasn't perfect in the second half in this one, and yeah, he threw a ball backwards to his guy that could have been like a game-changing fumble, but he came up with a couple big plays. Overall, he played a really good football game, and he's redeemed himself. And I think you have to give Dan Campbell props for that, because that man has just brought this entire organization back to life. Like, he really is awesome. And the last 2 years has been a very strong Coach of the Year candidate. Shout out to him. You also have a signature Lions moment in this game, because you mentioned their red zone success. They have that 4th and 1 where they're on the 2. And they bring in Dan Skipper. They bring in the 6th lineman. They don't end up throwing to him. But Goff there made a big-time throw. He put that on a rope to Laporta in the back of the end zone. So it's the aggression. It's the trench dominance. It's Aiden Hutchinson, their star defensive guy. And then it's a redeemed Goff. Like, it really felt like they hit a lot of the key boxes. And that was awesome to see, because nobody deserves this more. Like, I am so genuinely happy for Lions fans.
As am I. And shout out Jared Goff. Shout out the offensive line. Shout out the fans, man. That's an underrated aspect that I didn't really consider coming into this game. Dude, these domes are hard to play in, Carson. The second, and we're going to get to this in a minute when we talk about the Houston game, when I saw that Houston crowd on the first drive, I went, oh, shit. This is not good. Like, H-Town had that place rocking. Detroit had that place rocking. It is loud in those stadiums, and those are starved fans. Like, those are fans turning out in droves because they haven't had this in years. Like, that was a really... I wish I had considered that aspect a little more coming into these games, because I think that those are real advantages for both of those teams.
It quite literally swung this game because the Rams had to burn the timeout early. And I can't remember why they burned their second timeout, but they're not in a position to stop the clock at the end of this one. And one, I know, was directly because the crowd was too loud and they couldn't get the play. And so, yeah, it definitely mattered.
100%. And I want to give some credence to the way you projected this game coming out, Carson, because I think a lot of your keys for the Rams' success did hit. The big one being Matthew Stafford. Oh my God.
Goodness.
How? I mean, I know this is a cliche, and I know a lot of people have said this about a lot of different things. Like, Matthew Stafford really has truly aged like a fine wine. Like, Matthew Stafford is playing the absolute best football of his career now, after a long career of getting beat up, of getting planted in the dirt. You see that one clip of him today getting dropped, and his eyes bug out his head. I was really scared for Stafford in that moment.
Yeah.
What an amazing season for the Rams. I know it ends in disappointment with a heartbreaking loss at the hands of the Lions, but this is a team that, with their 70-man roster at the beginning of the preseason, had nearly either 40 or 40-plus rookies, close to, on their roster, one of the youngest groups in the league. And, I mean, no picks. This is a team this was supposed to be a rebuilding season for LA. In midseason, It looked like they weren't even going to make a playoff push potentially with where they were seeding-wise. It looked like Seattle was going to run away with it. And Stafford propels himself to a top-5 QB season, continues to do this. Looking forward to next year, Carson, again, this is a ways away. If Stafford can even come close to this level of production, if you could beef up some of the weak parts, I mean, I think the Rams could be a contender again next year. Obviously, again, that is contingent on Matthew Stafford maintaining this amazing elite level of play. But with the skill position talent, with the way they were able to run the ball this season too, considering that they are a young roster that now has some playoff experience that is going to get better, they got a lot of momentum, and it seems like the Rams really aren't that far away from, I don't know, maybe being contenders again next year. It really seemed like they were tanking, nosediving into a rebuild after they went all in on that Super Bowl run. And ironically, even after giving up all of those assets, it really feels like the Rams aren't that far away.
They aren't, because Matt Stafford clearly this year, by the end of the season, with the dudes who are healthy, to me at least, was the fourth best quarterback standing, only behind those tier 1 guys, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar. And this game was incredible evidence for that. Like, he was basically flawless in the second half of this season, and that's what made the Rams so dangerous. That's why they went on this crazy hot streak at the end of the year, winning 7 of their last 8 after the bye, and they did make this sort of unexpected playoff push, and they were a really dynamic offense. Yeah, they found diamonds in the rough elsewhere, and they really, really did. Kyron Williams being the most productive per-game rusher in the league when he was a 5th-round pick last year. Puka coming up and having one of the most impressive rookie receiving seasons ever when he was a 5th-rounder this year, and having such an incredible performance in this playoff game. Like, those are absolutely huge factors. But at the end of the day, it was Stafford controlling the game, making such big-time throws from all the different arm angles, hanging in the pocket, taking hits. This game, it was ridiculous, dude. How many times is it, Stafford's hurt, right? He's already dealing with a bad thumb, and then he hits his hand on a defender's helmet on the follow-through, and then Aiden Hutchinson steps on him, and he gets hit, and he's hurt, and he goes to the 10, and he just keeps coming back, and it never felt for a moment like it affected him. The guy was just phenomenal, and yeah, when he's playing at that level, I think if they could improve this defense, the offense is already pretty much all the way there. And I don't know if there's a quarterback whose legacy has benefited more from their 33-plus age seasons. You could argue Brady, just because he won so much from that point forward and clearly created a gap between himself and everybody else. But in terms of guys who weren't universally highly regarded, and a lot of people would kind of slander and say he turned the ball over too much, he had never done it on a good team. Stafford's talent has always been undeniable. He was historically regarded as a prospect because of just the unbelievable talent that he had, and now he is channeling that, and he's in a good situation with a good coach, and he's got a good receiving core around him, and he had 4,900 yards and 41 touchdowns in an elite Super Bowl run a couple years ago, and this year was only his 2nd Pro Bowl season ever, man. The guy has been, I think, underappreciated for a long time, but he is playing the best football of his career, and he saved a season that was seemingly in ruins, and a team that it seemed was in as bad a situation as anybody because they had given up so much draft capital, and yet some of their key guys were old and hurt, all these things. He turned around a sinking ship, and that to me is a big win. The Rams, had built a lot of momentum and hoped that they could win this game, but 10 weeks ago they weren't supposed to be here at all. And I will say, it sucks that Lions fans booed Stafford. That sucks.
Yeah, that's your guy, man.
That's your guy. That's a top 3 player in your franchise's history. He stuck it out with you for 12 years. It's not personal, bro.
That's a cool debate. Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson are 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
3. You don't think 3's Bobby Lane?
I think it's Stafford, man. I think it's Stafford.
I can see that. Billy Sims, show him a little love, too. I know his peak was brief. Stafford is probably that 3rd guy.
That's the thing to me, man. It's the longevity. It's a decade plus with the franchise consistently producing at such a high level. Shout out Bobby Lane. I guess you could make an argument for him, but Stafford's pretty phenomenal. And certainly in modern post-merger history, I think that he is number 3. But shout out to the Lions, man. And you picked them to make the NFC title game when it looked like they were going to have to face the Dallas Cowboys. And now that matchup is going to be a whole lot more favorable. Because they're getting the winner of Bucs-Eagles. So I'm with you, man. I think that they are there. I was worried about the defense. The defense stepped up in this one, and just really happy for everybody in that organization, everybody who roots for them. Awesome story. But as I just mentioned, Logan, things went a little bit off the rails for the Dallas Cowboys today. The blowing everybody out Dallas Cowboys, the 12-win Dallas Cowboys, the 2-seed Dallas Cowboys. And I got to give you props again, man, because you have been predicting the downfall. You have said that it is inevitable, and it came in a really, really ugly way in this one. Who do you blame most for just the embarrassment that we saw from Dallas, and what do you make of it?
Mike McCarthy and his big watermelon head. He's probably number one.
Okay.
Carson, to be frank with you, yeah, I've been preying on the Cowboys' downfall all season. I'm mad that I didn't predict it this week. I mean, I really have been Dallas's biggest hater this season. I'm mad that I didn't have faith in Jordan Love. Yeah, I'm probably not the biggest. There are some bigger, but
yeah,
I'm not fond of.
It's really tough competition.
We're worldwide. Cowboys haters unite. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to see it for Cowboys fans. It'd be nice. I feel bad for y'all that they keep teasing y'all like this, but it really is the same old Dallas Cowboys. And Carson, I want you to be right one year, because I try to believe and I try to get this magic and gusto. And you said it coming into it. You can't attribute these qualities to this Cowboys team, because it's not. It's been 20 years. We've seen a lot of different changes. And maybe it is, man. Maybe it is that damn blue logo. Carson, they've won 4 total playoff games in the last 27 seasons, and right now they have the most consecutive playoff appearances without a consecutive championship game. It is the biggest monkey on anybody's back in sports, maybe outside of Lamar Jackson winning a playoff game, and probably even more. I mean,
this is bigger.
It is what Dallas is known for, and it is what we come to expect every single playoff run. Like Carson, they came in, I felt woefully underprepared for this game. That's why I say Mike McCarthy, Dan Quinn. I thought this was a colossal failure on all ends. The players being prepared for this game, Dan Quinn's defensive play calling and schemes, and then Dak just completely poops his pants. Like early on, I was holding out hope because it was, CD and him just had a couple bad drops, and it was like, okay, we just got to get the offense in rhythm. CD's got to catch one of these passes. We got to get a first down. We got to move the sticks. And then Dak throws those interceptions, and it just felt like that quicksand, man. It was like, we're going to get a classic Dallas game. You get the lapses in coverage. Jordan Love is dotting up guys on big plays. And so you know what? I'm not going to do it. I could do a freaking victory lap on Dallas. We already know what Dallas is. I don't have to tell you guys. I don't have to beat the dead horse. Dallas, this is your reputation until you do something about it. I don't have to keep giving the same spiel. So you know what? Instead of spreading hate and negativity, we're going to spread some love, baby. We're going to spread some love, Carson.
Yeah,
Jordan Love.
Wait, let me spread some negativity first. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
We got to talk about the Cowboys, man, because what the hell? Like, I have been a Cowboys defender. I didn't have them going to the Super Bowl or anything, which I know some people do, but I had them in my NFC Championship game because I felt this is one of the 2 most talented teams in the NFC. I felt this is a quarterback who has been playing at a top 5 level this season. And yeah, I have been skeptical of the idea that there's some sort of invisible curse that hangs over the Cowboys franchise. Now, I have pushed the idea that there could be curses involved with other franchises this year, if it's Volgamir, one of the 8 great warlocks of the old world. But when it comes to football, I feel like it's such a small sample size sport. And we can overreact to, like, genuinely a couple of games on a playoff stage because they're so memorable, and we can extrapolate these takeaways that I think is very different from the NBA. Like, if a guy struggles in an NBA playoff run, you're getting a larger sample size. If a guy struggles in multiple playoff runs, we're talking about probably multiple dozens of basketball games. And playoff basketball is tangibly different from regular season basketball in a way that is not the case for the NFL, right? Defenses are legitimately much more dialed in. Teams are more specifically dedicated to game planning and keying in on your tendency, whereas every NFL game is a big deal. Every NFL game you have a week to prepare for. Every NFL game, regular season or playoffs, really, really matters. So, yeah, I have felt at times that these things with the Cowboys are overplayed and that any year 31 teams are not going to win the Super Bowl. And so it's easy to say, oh, this team has some quality and just because they didn't win it all. But Jesus, man, like what the fuck? Like this was a disaster. This was a genuine disaster. And the one thing I will say is that Dak Prescott was not good in this game. Dak Prescott was not good, and he absolutely bears responsibility. But he is going to take, I think, the majority of the blame for this game, which to me is just the classic quarterback attribution error. Because, yes, he was bad early, and it felt like he just couldn't really get in sync with his receivers. He put the ball in harm's way a couple too many times. The pick six was killer. But everybody looks at him. I think Barstool literally just posted on Instagram, like, breaking Dak his ass. And it's like, really, man? Like, this dude was clearly a top MVP candidate this year. This guy had a really great season. And at the end of the day, the Cowboys certainly found more success moving the ball than they did stopping the Packers from moving it.
Yeah.
And, of course, a lot of their yardage in this game is put up in effectively garbage time. It's hilarious. I tweeted out a stat. 2 teams ever have had 37 first downs in a playoff game. One of them was the Dallas Cowboys today. They had 510 yards. Dak threw for 400 yards. All of those numbers are super inflated, right? This offense took a while to get going, and then they started facing soft coverages, and the Packers even let some starters rest. But they were moving the ball early in the second half, in that final drive of the first half, when it's like the game wasn't over yet. So if I'm saying, is this more on the offense, more on Dak, or more on just a defensive collapse? It's the latter, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you allowed 7.7 yards per play in this game. You allowed 41 points. You allowed 415 yards. I think Dan Quinn can kiss those head coaching dreams goodbye, man. No chance. This team was unprepared, and what I will say is LaFleur was awesome.
Yeah.
And to me is honestly the MVP of this game for the Packers. I thought their game plan was phenomenal. We have seen that you can run the ball on the Cowboys. They are much more intimidating in terms of the pass rush up front than they are their actual run-stopping ability. The Niners showed us that. The Cardinals showed us that. The Buffalo Bills certainly showed us that. And the Packers came in and they committed to running the ball, and they dominated, and that opened up the play-action game, and they were able to really get some explosive plays, taking the top off this defense. But some of the blown coverages on the back line were just humiliating. Romeo Dobbs wide open, 30-something yards downfield. Luke Musgrave, bro, stopped for like a full 2 seconds to catch that ball, and nobody could touch him. Long-ass touchdown. So, to me, that was the most humiliating part of this game, was the performance from a Dallas defense that dominated a lot of subpar competition this year, and at a couple points we did see good offenses definitely put up a lot of numbers on. But I just think you have to look at the coaches here. I think McCarthy's gone. I think Dan Quinn is gone. And when you compare this to their other playoff losses, this is the worst by far. I know that the clock ran out on them in that Niners game, but losing to the Niners, great football team, losing to a Rams team that was on their way to the Super Bowl, losing in Dak's rookie year to a Packers team that was really good, all of those in one-score games, that's different. They got their asses handed to them for 60 minutes by the youngest team in the NFL, a team that was not supposed to be here, a team that it's like, hey, good for them, dude. What a story that they made it here. So you can't look at this and say, we're going to run it back. I don't think Dak is the problem. I think you can win a lot of games with Dak. Yes, he has shown this weird tendency to sort of shy away from the biggest moments and to play below his peak level. But again, that is still to some extent a small sample size thing. I think you have to make changes in terms of coaching. I think you got to look at the linebackers and the safeties on this defense, because I thought that those guys were really bad. And this is horrifying. Like, of all the blowouts that we've seen, this might be the worst. The Dolphins was bad, but this was humiliating.
This was humiliating. You said a lot of things I agree with, Carson. One, Dan Quinn, I could not believe I was hearing. The coaching carousel obviously is a big talking point with all the firings going around now. And the big rumor I heard was that Seattle was considering bringing him back. Obviously, he was the defensive coordinator for the Legion of Boom. With Pete Carroll's absence now, that was the big rumor. And I just went,
don't do it.
What? Before this game. Why? And now this kind of pedals onto it. I do think McCarthy's gone. Considering the great coaching pool that we have for this offseason, I think the Cowboys should dive in, figure out who their guy is going to be. And then the final thing, I think not only do they need to invest in that defensively, Carson, I think up front, they had 3 all-pro offensive linemen this year. They need some big boys who can get pushed for the run game. And you need to lean into the run a lot more. Goff, guys like this. And Dak had been pretty perfect this year. And they ran a lot of shotgun. I just think early, when you see Dak falter like that and struggle, there has to be a more of an emphasis on getting that running game going. And I think Dallas has to get back to that identity behind. Take some pressure off of Dak. And I completely agree with the QB attribution point that you made, Carson. Dak Prescott, on the whole, has been a good playoff performer. Not great, not dominant by any means, but he has not been the problem. I think the defense is far more of a bigger issue. But like we said, let's get off the somber stuff. Let's spread some love, some positivity. I mean, the big story has to be what Jordan Love was doing to this defense all game long, man. Like you said, the lapses in coverage, hitting guys who are wide open. But it's also the arm talent. Dude, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
You tweeted out, you were like, I don't know if anybody this year has more off the back foot crazy bombs than Jordan Love. It's nuts. It is actually insane. And I think the Packers have hit their third consecutive grand slam at the quarterback position. It is remarkable. I think Jordan Love is a franchise guy. And the thing that Patrick Mahomes said, Jordan's gotten better every single game in his first year. That is the most encouraging thing that you can see, is that composure immediately and then progress built onto that. He already had a solid foundation, and we've seen him improve. Carson, I was blown away by him in play action in this game. He has got one of the best fakes, and he is so great out of play action. In the playoffs, that is such a deadly weapon when you can do that. Like his deception on the handoffs, the immediate, getting back and ready to fire. I was super impressed with Jordan Love in this game. Under pressure, he was pressured just 4 times in this game, Carson. He went 4 of 4 for 117 yards and a touchdown. This game, 272 yards, 3 TDs, 15 completions. He had a passer rating of 157.2. He would have had a perfect passer rating if not for a late meaningless incompletion. Carson, it's the highest passer rating in a road playoff game in the Super Bowl era.
Wow.
Do you know the other 2 quarterbacks he beat out for that award? One guy is active. The other guy is a way throwback from the very start of the Super Bowl era.
Okay, well, when I hear way throwback and efficiency, my first thought is Bart Starr.
Bart Starr is the other one.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a hint. Bart Starr is not the only guy tied to the teams in this football game for this answer.
Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, it's not Rodgers. It's
Tony Romo? That
No,
can't
no.
be right.
It was Dak Prescott.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he beats out Starr and
Look at Dakota.
Crazy, man. Prescott and Bart Starr, best performances. CJ Stroud also had a passer rating of 157.2 today. Jordan Love is the man, and those shot plays are going to kill you, man. I think it's just remarkable. I didn't see this at all for Green Bay, considering, like you said, how young this team was. That, to me, was the death knell. I didn't consider this. I thought the Dallas' experience was going to shine through. For the Packers...
If I can just give you one more shout-out, Logan.
Yeah.
Because you deserve it for some of these picks. You had the Packers winning this division in the preseason.
I did.
You had them winning 11 games.
I didn't see... I predicted it preseason. I didn't see them winning a playoff game, though. I just thought it was too tall of a task with how young this team was. Props to LaFleur. Props to Jordan Love. I mean, I think this team is building a foundation now where they're going to be contenders for the next decade, man.
Well, I don't know if you can ever just presume that, but they've got some great ingredients in place, man. First of all, LaFleur is an awesome coach. And I think that he has had an awesome opportunity this year to establish that free of Aaron Rodgers, because obviously the offensive production has been phenomenal up to this point in his career. The winning has been phenomenal, but that's always going to be inseparable from the fact that you're playing from one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks ever. That guy is your quarterback. Now doing it with such a young team and doing it with such clear schematic brilliance, it's just awesome. And like I said, the weakness of this Cowboys defense has been their ability to stop the run and at times to let up explosive plays in the passing game, and that's exactly what the Packers did on both fronts. They pounded the run game, and then the play action was so effective, hitting some of those big shot plays, and he just drew up a couple of wide open chunk plays, touchdowns in some circumstances. I think that the reemergence of Aaron Jones has been awesome and has been really good for unlocking this team's ceiling because he was banged up this year, but we really saw him come on strong at the end. And that's been the identity of the Packers teams, even the last few years. Like, Rodgers wasn't throwing at crazy volume. He was throwing with crazy efficiency. They were running the football a lot. And the stretch that we've seen from Aaron Jones really helps unlock that dynamic, this just extremely balanced offense. But Jordan Love was balling, man. He is stamped. He is so damn good. And when I think about our top 10 healthy quarterback rankings that we did a handful of weeks ago, he belonged there. There's no question he belonged there. And when you see how he performs on this stage, I mean, this dude is a hell of a lot better than a Tua Tagovailoa. I think even though I really like Goff, I really like Kirk, he's the best quarterback in this division. There is just so much arm talent there. So much creativity as a passer. I will say the throws off the back foot, that setting may be dialed up a little bit too high right now. Just a little bit. Like, the touchdown was sick because he threw a dot off his back foot the first touchdown. And then he had that throw to Dobbs where he gets bumped by Aaron Jones and there's really only a split second to make that throw. And the ball's a little bit underthrown off his back foot, but it's pretty sick that he got it there. Then the touchdown to Luke Musgrave, it's like, I think you could have just stepped into that one, dude. Like, I think you could have stepped into that one and thrown a much better ball. Didn't end up mattering, but I love that, man. I love that ability to deliver the ball from multiple angles and from different positions, and he just makes big plays, and he hangs in the pocket, and he trusts himself to make big-time throws. He's a baller, and I think you got to give props to the depth of weapons that the Packers have as well. Like, such an unknown commodity coming into this year, the totality of this receiving core. And Jaden Reed, who has been their most productive receiver this year, didn't catch a ball in this game. Romeo Doubs went off. He had 150 yards. Like, they just have so many dudes who they can turn to. Musgrave at times, Wicks, Christian Watson. It's not a strong group, but it's a deep group, and it's a balanced group because of that. So, shout out to the Packers, man. This is awesome, and obviously, they have their work cut out for them now because they have to deal with the San Francisco 49ers. I wouldn't pick them to win that game, but Jordan Love is playing at an awesome level. And this defense, although obviously it let up as this game went along, I thought did play well early. I thought they were physical, and I think that they've had their issues this year, but the last couple weeks, they have been playing some of their better football.
Yeah, and they've got real-time big playmakers. You know what I mean? I mean, Jair Alexander gets that interception early. It's not like this team is – or this defense is devoid of talent. You know, it's been a scheme thing. And that's another thing. Shout out to Joe Barry for a good game plan, a good game. You know, again, like you said, as the game went along, they kind of got cooked. But that's garbage time. You're letting the clock wind down. Shout out to them, man. They do have their work cut out for them, but certainly not impossible, man. Just not a scenario. I counted the Packers were probably the team that I least expected to come away with a win in Wild Card weekend.
Yeah, they were definitely on that short list at the very least. And hopefully Jair is healthy because he was awesome in this game. LaFleur said that even if this game was close, though, he wouldn't have gone back in. So hopefully he's good to go next week. But yeah, it's him, a couple high-impact pass rushers. Shout out to all of those dudes. And just one last thing on the suffering of the Dallas Cowboys. They flashed a graphic during the broadcast today that there are only 3 teams who have had a championship game drought in the NFC since 1995, and the other 2 are the Lions and the Commanders. And I just thought the Cowboys have been so much better than those 2 teams over those times. So I looked it up, and the Lions are 31st in winning percentage since 1995. The Commanders are 27th, and the Dallas Cowboys are 10th. Like, to be that consistently good, they've made the playoffs 13 times since 1995. And they have not made a championship game once. You gotta wonder, man. Did Jerry sell his soul? Did Jerry sell his soul for the 3 rings back in the 90s? Like, something's going on. Something strange is going on. And shout out to the Pack for taking advantage of it. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours.
Let's talk about yesterday's games now, because as rough as the Cowboys had it, it was pretty ugly for the Dolphins to just really never had a chance against the Chiefs. Thoroughly outplayed for that entire football game. Let's start with them. What did you feel like was exposed with Miami here?
One thing, it's always going to be tough for the Miami Dolphins to win playoff games. They have a luxury of playing in great weather down south there in Miami all year round. When Dan Marino got to the playoffs, that was a question mark, and I think it's going to be a question mark anytime. Like, since 2016, the Dolphins are 0-11 in sub-40-degree weather. I believe Tua is 0-6 in sub-50-degree weather. That's not even that cold, man. For a team that is kind of spoiled by playing down there, again, it's not impossible. You know, Tampa Bay plays in Florida, too, won the Super Bowl a couple years back. They had home field advantage, Joe, and they had the greatest quarterback of all time. So it's always going to be tough for Miami. If you're having to go to Buffalo, if you're having to go to Kansas City, and that environment's crazy. It's not easy for anybody to play in Arrowhead. Arrowhead is one of the biggest home field advantages because the fans are crazy, because that stadium was deliberately built to generate noise vertically, like Lumen Field or whatever Seattle's field is called now. Same exact thing is Seattle, built to generate noise, to be loud. And then in these conditions, this was always going to be an uphill battle for Miami because of their team. Also, this defense was severely hampered, severely injured, way beat up. Always going to be an uphill battle. The guy that obviously comes up the most short, though, is Tua Tagovailoa, and I think you have to come away with that feeling.
Yeah.
Carson and I ragged on him all year long, not because we wanted to, not because we're Tua haters, because I just don't think Tua is that good. And I think this was a game that is just really hard for a guy like him to win.
Yeah.
It's not even just the things that we pointed at, Carson. Tua's not extremely athletic. He's not a big play extender. He had a couple scrambles, but nothing crazy. Like, literally, at the start of this game, I think he had the longest run of his season. It was like 12 yards.
Yeah, he hadn't rushed for more than 9 yards on a scramble in the regular season, I don't think.
Yeah, that'll tell you. You know, so he's not a big-time playmaker with his legs and his mobility. And he's very easy to disrupt. I mean, a lot of these in routes, out routes, that's the thing that makes this really hard with a QB with this kind of limited arm strength. You can't even dial up. Think about what the Texans did drawing up things for the rookie CJ Stroud. Deep concepts, corner routes, posts, crosses, all kinds of crazy vertical routes that you can draw up for him that he can not only read and dissect because he's that smart as a quarterback, he can make all these throws because he has the arm. In a scenario when you're down in a playoff game with Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback, it makes it that much harder because you cannot get vertical with the football. And I don't want to hear about the weather conditions. Patrick Mahomes got vertical all goddamn game, you know?
Yeah.
It's a Tua problem. It is a solely Tua problem. It is just unique to him because he's that limited as a quarterback. And again, this is a nightmare scenario. When you're in a deficit like this, trailing, you can't push the ball down the field, which does what? Well, you can't run the ball because the clock's ticking down. You got to keep throwing it so you can keep the drive alive. You can't throw the ball downfield, so what does that do? The defense knows that you're throwing underneath concepts the entire time, and they can just wait on them. That happened all throughout the rest of this game.
Yeah.
Tua was on time with his throws, but it's like there's no creativity. There's no surprise. We all know what you're going to do. And the Chiefs have a great group of cornerbacks and defensive backs and one of the best defenses in the NFL. And they were able to easily disrupt him. Like, I don't know if Tua is good enough to win a playoff game. I don't know if Tua is the guy for Miami. I didn't know if I was going to have that coming into this playoff run or after this season because it was a great year for Tua. They got to the playoffs. They almost won the AFC East. It was a successful season. But when you see a playoff game like this and when you consistently see him limiting this team throughout the regular season, I think that has to be your question. And it's not a question for me anymore, Carson. It's a takeaway. I don't think Tua is the guy for Miami. I would explore somebody else, somebody more physically gifted, somebody who can just do more dynamic things with the football in their hands at the quarterback position. And Carson, I wonder if we even overrated Tua by putting him in that top 15 range. I wonder if Tua is a median to below average starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm sorry, Dolphins fans. I don't say this to be mean. I say this to be objective and to be real. I believe this about Tua. I don't think he's that good.
He's not the guy. There are so many overwhelming advantages that this Dolphins team has. They have, in my opinion, clearly a top 2 play caller in football. Like, I think Mike McDaniel is awesome. I think that he creates advantages regularly with his mind, with his creativity, his play calling. And then you have the fastest overall offense that I've ever seen. And you have one of the best receiving duos that I've ever seen. And when it comes down to it, against good competition this year, against winning teams, you average 16 points per game. You go 1-6. In the second half of the game against the Bills, trying to win your division, you produce 40-something yards. In this game, you put up 7 points. Against the Ravens, you get embarrassed on both sides of the ball, really, but that offense was not working at all. So I just don't think there's any more excuses that you can throw out that make any sense. And there are so many religious Tua defenders who I just don't think can come to terms with his limitations. Yes, his accuracy is really good. Yes, his timing is really good when he's throwing to his first read. And when your receivers are this good and your play calling is this good and you're facing a bunch of mediocre defenses, that can lead to some really nice production. But when you have probably the weakest arm of any starting quarterback in the NFL, and when you are a limited athlete and a creator out of structure, totally limited in that capacity, and when you aren't actually great as a processor of the game, moving from one read to the next as things go off schedule, there is a hard ceiling on what you can be. And we have seen that hard ceiling with Tua. So people will try to throw excuses out there and say, well, the Dolphins defense was hurt. You put up 7 points. Doesn't matter. You're not beating anybody in a playoff game with 7 points. This isn't 1972, and this isn't the Steelers going out there. Play calling. I know some people were frustrated with Mike McDaniel. Why do you think the play calling is so conservative? Why is this creative, genius, hyper-aggressive dude all of a sudden just dialing up wide receiver screen after wide receiver screen, slant, everything within 10 yards? I mean, I think Tua completed like 9 passes behind the line of scrimmage in this game because he has no faith in this dude to push the ball downfield because this guy showed him that he couldn't do it, especially in these conditions against a defense of this caliber. And, I mean, the first pick from Tua was bad, just totally floated that ball. The touchdown, dude, their one explosive play of the game was a terrible underthrow. Terrible. Tyreek is just a superhuman. But there was almost nothing beyond the line of scrimmage. And as you said, the Chiefs' entire defense was sitting on that, and they were blowing shit up behind the line. So this offense just had nothing going. They had no faith in Tua. He looked completely overwhelmed. The weather doesn't work for me because, as you said, Mahomes looked great. He looked unaffected by it. So it's not that Tua sucks. Tua is solid. He does a couple things really well. But he will never look better than he does in this situation. This is offensive heaven, and in big moments, he still comes up really short because of fundamental weaknesses that he has. And if you want to seriously contend, this is not a guy that you can invest in at the quarterback position. I'm talking about now that the rookie deal is up. This is not a guy who you can give a $40+ million deal extension because paying the wrong quarterback is a fucking disaster.
Hey, Dallas.
Look at the Giants right now. But Dak's good, man. Dak is a hell of a lot better than Tua. I'm talking, look at Cleveland. At the end of the day, the quarterback position is still what holds them back. Look at Denver, just having to cut Russ, deal with all that dead money. Look at the Giants. Like, when you pay the wrong guy, it will inhibit you. And it's not that Tua is going to so obviously hold them back in the regular season in the same way, but when you have Tyreek and Waddle and McDaniel, like, you can just do better than this. And you should gamble on doing better than this because you've seen the ceiling here and it's just not enough. And if you pay Tua, then how are you going to improve this defense that, yes, was absolutely banged up, was down some key guys, but I still think needs to be better if they want to contend. If you're paying your quarterback $40 million and you can't add those key defensive players, you can't pay them. Maybe you can't retain all of your key offensive weapons. I just don't see it. I do not see a world in which this team commits big money to Tua long-term at the quarterback position and they don't end up regretting it down the line. And that's a rough takeaway, but it's something that they're going to have to stomach, and all of the Tua-non people are going to have to come to terms with. Because you're a Dolphins fan, right? You're not just a Tua fan. And as a Dolphins fan, you have to see how Tua is holding you back.
Yeah, and you think about the potential quarterbacks that the Dolphins are going to have to face if they do rock with Tua for the next couple years. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, potentially Aaron Rodgers. CJ Stroud's going to be there every year. Like,
yep.
I'm sorry.
Didn't even mention Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, you got T-Law. I mean, that's 8 QBs. That's more than the entire playoff field. Like, whatever, if you get into the playoffs, you are going to have likely the worst quarterback in the playoff field every single year. Considering that's the most important position on the field, I don't really like your chances of going on a deep playoff run. And like you said, Carson, you cannot give him that kind of money. If you allocate that money to him, you're just losing it on the back end somewhere else. And I would much rather go draft another guy. Go spend that money somewhere else. Go bolster up your team. Go get a new rookie. See if he works. I mean, if that's your choice, either paying Tua or going back to the well and getting a rookie, I'm taking a rookie in a heartbeat. On the flip of this, Carson, I don't think I have any new things to say about the Kansas City Chiefs. They came in here and they handled business the way I expected them to. Crazy home field advantage, great environment, place was rocking. Mahomes made big plays, did his thing. And the dynamic that I was really impressed with is, as many people have noted throughout this weekend, this is likely going to be the worst weather of any playoff run in a long time, and probably 15 years since we saw 2007 Packers Giants. But we're going to get that consistently, it seems like, every weekend with the storms that are coming through. I can't predict a month in advance when we get into conference title or Super Bowl, but divisional round is going to be pretty crappy too. And so I think the Chiefs have an X factor in Pacheco, that the fact that they can run the ball this season, that is the big difference to me. My formula, because I picked the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, I'm sticking with it. Best quarterback in the game, one of the best defenses in football. I think that formula is always really, really reliable for a playoff run. But with the fact that the weather is this bad and they have the best running game of the Mahomes era, that to me is a whole new dynamic that makes me like the Kansas City Chiefs even more. So I don't have a ton of new stuff to say. Super impressed with the defense, the corners, the way they were able to shut down and suffocate them. I've got even more faith in the Chiefs.
Yeah, this was a really strong showing from them because they put up 26. They could have put up more in this game. Like, they didn't finish drives all that well, which, to be fair, has been an issue for this team. They are 17th in red zone offense, and when they aren't going to hit the same sort of explosive plays that they used to, and they're not just overall as dynamic as an offense, they do need to be able to execute in those clutch situations. But I thought that this was still a really good offensive game from them. I thought that Rashee Rice was phenomenal, and I legitimately feel that he could be their number one weapon in a deep run this year. I really believe in that dude, and Kelsey still may consume more attention. He still may draw more double teams over the middle of the field and whatnot, but he's just lost a step, man. And we were talking about this. Like, I don't think there's an argument that he's the best tight end in the league anymore. George Kittle, to me, has lapped him because Kittle's probably a better receiver right now. He's certainly much better after the catch and is a way better blocker. He's just better. Kelsey's lost a step after the catch. This game, he had 3 drops, which was weird, but painful, tough to watch. And I think that Rashee, you see, after the catch especially, is really damn good. And he was reliably getting open in this game. He was running clean routes. He's really good. And so the emergence of a number 2, maybe co-number 1, his production was very similar to Kelsey's this year. That with Patrick Mahomes with this defense, yeah, dude. Like, I can't write off the possibility that they could do it all, that they could go out there and win it all. They're not my pick because we haven't seen those offensive explosions, but this was a step in the right direction, and this defense is just awesome, man. I don't really know what else there is to say. It has been as consistently good a defense as anybody, and that was the case again in this one. And I agree with you on the dynamic of what Pacheco can do, because as much as this offense has been lacking in the explosiveness of years past, the secret weapon they have is by far the best running back of the Mahomes era. That is Pacheco. I mean, the physicality with which he runs, he is just going to fight for extra yards every single time out. And in cold winter football games, yeah, that is a very valuable dynamic to have in your offense too. So to me, this was more embarrassing for the Dolphins. I just thought they kind of went out limp, and it was an ugly end to a season where sort of all their biggest issues were exposed on this stage. But for the Chiefs, it was a very good win, and I think that it definitely affirmed a lot of what you've believed in with them. And if it is the Bills playing them, man, I'll stick with my pre-playoff prediction of Buffalo, but that'd be a hell of a ball game. And I would be scared to play the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, last game, Logan. Texans-Browns, which was, of course, actually the first game of the weekend. Big ol' win for the Texans. Blowout win for the Texans. How legit are they to you, and how impressed were you by this win?
CJ Stroud is the outlier, man.
Him.
CJ Stroud is the outlier.
Him.
I mean, when the kid misses, you know a quarterback is great when CJ misses a throw, and I'm surprised. If CJ is off by an inch, I'm going, damn, man, that's weird. Like, CJ just to me is so stamped as a bona fide franchise guy. It's insane. And I also want to give so much credit. Bobby Slowick is a beast, man. The stuff he was drawing up to date, there were guys so wide open all game. And I want to cut the Browns a little slack on this one. Number 33, Mr. Ronnie Hickman. I'm sorry. You're not that good, my friend. They desperately missed Grant Delpit in this football game. That was evident from the start. And, it looked like we were going to get a shootout. Bang, 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 bang. I mean, we're championship rounds, man. We're throwing haymakers. Cleveland and Houston going back and forth. And all of a sudden, Joe Flacco, man.
Yeah.
Balloon pops, 2 back-to-back pick sixes, and it is Jover for the Cleveland Browns. Like I said earlier, I wish I had thought about the home field advantage, the component of Cleveland doesn't travel well. This is a road game. They're injured. And H-Town had that place rocking. Once those big shot plays hit, the momentum, it was just all in Houston's favor. And for a team this young, it's really similar to me to the Packers dynamic. A quarterback this young, balling out in his first game on this biggest stage, you don't see many things quite like it. I wouldn't want to play the Texans. The Texans scare me for one reason and one reason only, that they have that quick strike ability. Every game this season, save a few. The Panthers game was weird. There's been games, but for the majority of games, there's always 3 to 4. Holy shit. CJ made that throw and hit this guy for 50 yards.
Yeah.
When you make plays like that so consistently, you can beat any team. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the Browns. Again, to me, it's the Joe Flacco run was kind of inevitable. The injuries, I think, were bad. And then, can I get an APB out on Mr. Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett?
Wow.
I think I saw him make like 2 plays in this football game. Yeah.
Wow.
Not my depoy. TJ
How
Watt
many
all the
plays
way.
is TJ going to make this weekend? That was in poor taste. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. I thought Myles Garrett was still pretty good, man. I thought he was pretty good. I thought that Laramie was good too, though.
Laramie dominated.
I don't know if he dominated. I thought that they both had some good wins. But what's funny to me about this game, I was really on the fence about 2 games coming into this weekend, and that was this one, and that was Rams-Lions. And I was like, in one of these 2 spots, I have to go with an upset. Not necessarily by seeding, more by like perception, who's the betting favorite. And I ended up going with the Rams over the Lions. But when I was talking about all the components for the Texans, I felt like I basically laid out the formula. I talked about how the Browns had been super turnover prone, especially under Joe Flacco, and the Texans had been the most turnover averse team in the league. And they had a difference of about 2 pick sixes in this one. I talked about how the Texans had done a really good job of getting pressure with 4 this year. And if they could do that, they could potentially exploit Flacco's lack of mobility and his inability to extend plays and create out of structure. And that definitely happened. They got home a lot in this game, and Flacco had some ugly moments because of that. And then CJ Stroud is just the man, and I trust him to be consistently elite, and he went crazy. So I guess that I saw the vision, but then I ignored the vision because I was like, I just think the Browns are better. The one thing I will say is I did not see a blowout coming. My feeling was they execute those things, and then in the big moment, it's like, man, I trust CJ more than Flacco, and that's the difference maker. I thought if one team was going to blow out the other, it was probably going to be Cleveland because we had seen how that offense exploded against this defense. An injured version of this defense, but still the first time around, and not the case. Not the case. Just unbelievable from Houston all around. I have to say, dude, CJ is not far from having the best pocket presence in the league. Like, I don't know if there's a dude out there who is this consistently hanging in there for that extra split second and making a big-time throw, doing it in traffic with dudes closing in on him. Like, it's just unbelievable. He is always trying to make that play. And if his dude has a step, like, even if he's getting hit, even if it's crowded and there's arms flying in his face, he's going to put that ball up there. And in this one, there are a couple where he misses, but it's an overthrow, so it's not a dangerous ball. He did put that one ball in danger, had that one like legitimately ill-advised throw, but he really has all year had this incredible combination of big-time explosive plays, creating stuff, doing things that other guys just can't, and avoiding mistakes. It's unbelievable. I will say also, Texans receivers were consistently getting separation in this game, and there was a whole lot of confusion on this Browns back line. There was some blown coverages as well, but it's what you said, dude. This Texans offense is just explosive, and CJ is a huge part of that. His willingness to let things play out and to make those big throws downfield. But we got to give full props to Nico Collins too, man, because this was a special game from him in a special season, and I think that because of preseason expectations and the fact that there were no big-name receivers in this room, there's sort of a tendency to give a lot more credit to Stroud than to the receiving core. But Tank Dell, when he was out there, was a special athlete. And Nico Collins, man, the guy is 6'4", he's athletic, he's fast, he's got great hands. He had that one awesome play where he just did such a great job of tracking the ball, fully flipping his hips, and then that set up a touchdown, got them, I think, inside the 10. Like, he's not just good. I think that dude is a star, and that is not just because he plays with CJ Stroud. He's really awesome. But CJ's the star. CJ's the number one name and face of this incredible season, and I think just cemented himself as the best rookie quarterback ever. We already had him in that spot, but to go out there and do this in a playoff game, man, there have been 3 dudes to have 230-plus passing yards and 3-plus passing touchdowns in a playoff game as a rookie ever. Do you want to guess who they are? I remember the list.
I would love to.
Okay.
Not as a rookie or in their playoff debut?
No, as a rookie in the playoffs.
I was looking at some stats. I was going to say the other guy in consideration for me would be Russell Wilson. Is he here?
It's not Russ. So you do have 2 modern guys. No.
Andrew Luck.
Not Luck. No. 2 active guys. How about that? 2 active guys for you.
2 active gentlemen.
Ooh. 2 guys who are in this playoff field.
Dak?
Dak did it.
Okay.
By the way, just look at these stats that are piling up for Dak.
Joe Flacco?
Stats. Not Flacco. Guy hasn't actually played yet in these playoffs. He did it quite recently.
Jalen Hurts?
No.
Josh?
No. This guy puts up big numbers. You may not think of him as being on the talent level of some of these other guys, but he's put up some big numbers.
It's not Baker.
No, it's not Baker.
Who is it?
It's Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy did this last year, and then I think that the last one was Slinging Sammy Baugh. Those were the 2 post-merger. But anyways, the whole point is CJ did that in the first half, man. The first half. Like, he is just disgusting, and in big-time situations has repeatedly delivered. Also got to give some real props to this Texans defense, though, because they got pressure. I thought that they were physical. They did a good job of tackling. I thought that they did so much better in terms of limiting explosive plays versus last time. Like, the Browns were moving the ball early in this one, but then they stopped moving it. And they weren't able to just say, hey, Amari, why don't you win one-on-one deep and we can get you 265 yards. So just all around, what a season for the Texans. What a win. There's definitely something special going on with that team right now. It's rare to have teams this young making playoff runs like this, and you have it right now with both them and the Packers, and you got to give credit to great coaching. You got to give credit to great quarterback play. I think those are the true driving factors for both, and it's fun, man. It's fun. I like the Texans.
I like the Texans a lot. They're hard not to root for, man. And yeah, dude, final thing, like you mentioned with Houston, the energy. The Texans played with a intensity and an effort, and that's a real D'Amico. It's a real thing. I was just going to make the comparison. Dallas came out flat as a 2-day-old soda. You know, Houston came out with some pop. Like, they hungry from the jump.
Like a fresh soda.
Like a fresh soda. Like one that you just cracked, not one that's been sitting out for 2 days.
Yeah.
Houston's a lot of fun. CJ's a lot of fun to root for. And the thing about Houston and Green Bay, Carson, house money. Nobody expected them boys to be here.
Yeah, it is really cool. Like, they were I guess you would have to put the Bucs in there, but two of the longest shots to make the playoffs, and here they are, and they're not just here. They're winning games. They're making noises, and those quarterbacks are becoming stars, man, like real national stars. Super cool, very deserved. On the flip side, were the Browns frauds, Logan?
Not at all. I don't think the Browns were frauds. I think this was a tough matchup for Cleveland. Again, you think about the perseverance of this season. Having all the quarterbacks in and out. I don't know if I've mentioned this stat on the show yet. I think I did last week. The Browns are the only team in NFL history to make the playoffs with 5 different starting quarterbacks in a season. It is one hell of an accomplishment. And again, they were hurt. Football is a game of the collective. Team sports are teams. We do this thing where we like to attribute it to individual players. It is a team sport.
Yeah.
The thing about teams is you take one cog out of that machine, the machine stops working. The machine stops spinning. You take Grant Delpit out of the equation, you see what happens. Carson, you allude to that Nico Collins overthrow that CJ Stroud misses. That's another 7 points. Ronnie Hickman has his feet in the mud. He has got cinder blocks on his feet. I mean, Nico just dusts him. He's supposed to be in a high, deep third. I mean, Nico just gasses him. Stroud misses that throw. To me, it just was kind of the perfect recipe as you laid out. The Joe Flacco's hot run came to an end.
Yeah.
Some of his worst tendencies came out. They weren't as fully healthy as they had been. And, this not that it felt inevitable for Cleveland that this was going to happen, but it certainly felt a lot more likely, and that there was some pixie dust. You know, it's like if I don't think we should be asking that question about, like, if Pittsburgh gets blown out of the water by Buffalo tomorrow night, for example. Like, I don't think Pittsburgh's fraudulent. I just think that they kind of had a run that was unsustainable. For Cleveland, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, but I think that the Browns were better and were more highly regarded, too, because, first of all, I think that defense was more dominant for most of the year. And, I mean, they were sitting at 11-5, whereas the Steelers, lost to a couple of 2-win teams. And there were just some really ugly moments, the point differential. And that Browns offense was humming by the end of the year. So I do think that they had more expectations. I thought they would win a playoff game. I thought it was pretty close to 50-50, but that's a different level of expectations than what I have for Pittsburgh. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to win playoff games with 38-year-old Joe Flacco. It is. When he has consistently had this issue of turning the ball over, he had 8 picks in his 5 regular season starts. Like, you can't be shocked by that. I don't know what the hell he was doing on the first one. The second one, he telegraphed big time. Like, as fun as it was, and although it absolutely made them better and got them over the hump into the playoffs, and I think gave them a better chance to win this game than DTR or PJ Walker or any of the other alternatives once Deshaun got hurt, it was never a serious solution. He's too much of a statue. He's too immobile in that pocket. And when you combine that with, hey, I don't know what the hell this guy's going to do a couple times a game, but he's probably going to give you the ball, like, there's just a ceiling on that. That being said, though, like, yes, the 2 pick sixes are unforgivable. 2 pick sixes.
Neil O'Donnell style, baby.
That's some Neil O'Donnell type shit. But to me, the more shocking part was the defense letting down. And yeah, Delpit's absence matters, but I will say I didn't think the pass rush really made CJ uncomfortable in this game, and they let up a lot of explosive plays, and that back end was brutal. So at the end of the day, it was the perfect storm for this blowout. 2 defensive touchdowns. The Browns allowed over 8 yards per play. Ridiculous. And they allowed some of those huge chunk plays. So I think Cleveland has a really good foundation. I think they have a lot of talent on this football team, but like, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, man, it's the same thing that we have said from the preseason. Until they figure out the quarterback position, you can only go so far. There is no NFL team that is going to make a meaningful run with the level of quarterback play that the Browns have had, even when it is Flacco in there, and they're handcuffed. As you are beautifully demonstrating, they are handcuffed to one of the worst contracts in NFL history.
No.
The worst.
The worst.
Probably the worst. But honestly, Russ gives them a run for his money. And Danny Dimes gives them both a run for their money. There's been some bad quarterback contracts, man. I mean, Russ is already cut. But Deshaun, when you consider bad guy, the draft capital they gave up, it's a disaster.
and it's the only quarterback contract. Again,
That is
I
true.
will emphasize this. You will never see another contract like this from any position. It
Yeah.
is fully guaranteed. Every dime they could
Yeah.
cut Deshaun tomorrow, and they would still owe him all of that money. And mind you, you get cut, you retire, like Tom Brady on the Bucks this season. That salary cap doesn't go anywhere, which
Yeah.
means effectively the Browns are handcuffed
Yeah, it's true.
110% completely totally to him. That's what
Yeah.
sucks, dude. They may have Carson, you said it about the all these other teams, Danny Dimes. You go in on the wrong guy, it
Yep.
can completely sink your championship hopes.
Yeah, God, I'd hate to be handcuffed to Deshaun Watson. What a nightmare. I really would. And I will say, the fact that there was a collective PR campaign this year by NFL ownership to say, hey, that Lamar guy, he's really not that good. He doesn't deserve a big contract. You can only guarantee so much money. And Deshaun got this fully guaranteed $260 million deal. I mean, isn't that remarkable contrast? And isn't that football karma to you scheming, conniving bastards? Lamar's two-time MVP. Deshaun is a bad guy, and he's not good at football. So, sorry, Browns fans. At least you got there. You know, not everybody can be the Detroit Lions, because guess what, Logan? As of today, you can have shit in Detroit.
Yeah.
It's breaking news. It's official. You can have shit in Detroit. So shout out to you guys. All right. That's going to do it for us here. As we said, we will be back tomorrow night. And I think we may go live during the Bills-Steelers game on TikTok. So that'll be more of a casual thing, obviously. But if you guys want to tune in, ask us some questions, see our live reaction, see Logan's agonized face when Josh Allen hangs his fourth touchdown of the first half on the Steelers, or see my much more agonized face if things go wrong, because I'm telling you, with the confidence that I've come into, with the stuff I've put on the line, if the Bills lose, this may be it for me. It may be over. So you can watch all that unfold in real time on the TikTok tomorrow. And of course, you can follow the TikTok if you want all of our trivia content, clips from the shows. That is at NerdSesh. Instagram is at NerdSesh as well. Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can listen to the podcast across audio platforms or find all of the full shows with video on the NerdSesh YouTube page. You can also find some video breakdowns that we do there, in-depth stuff normally about the NBA. And you can check out some Nerd Sesh merch at thevolume.com. The link to that is at our link tree that is across our social media bios. And you can cop some Nerd Sesh merch at thevolume.com. Link to that is also in our link tree. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.